the cover, you're going to need 4 pieces of chipboard, whether they're 12 by 12 medium weight or 8.5 by 11 thinner. These I get at Michael's, the thin ones. They're like a heavy cereal box, I would guess. I prefer the thicker ones, and I get these through Walmart.com. Just search for medium 12 by 12 chipboard. So you need all of these cut down to 11 inches. And I have one of these old Fiskar ones with the slidey blade on it. The blade is worn so much that I can't cut paper with it, but I can score chipboard. So take this to 11 inches, and I'm going to do all 4. Actually 2 at 8. And I need a spine piece at 3 1/4. Just right there. Another 8-inch piece. And then I need 2 at 6 1/2. And then a 2 at 1/2 inch, which I will cut from one of the scraps from one of these. Don't throw away your scraps. You could use them in a smaller scrapbook, especially these bigger pieces here. You can certainly do these with a ruler. You can't use a pair of scissors. You will need a craft knife of some kind. 1/2 inch strips out of. This is the spine piece. Off, and then I will make my cuts for my 2 1/2 inch pieces. Okay, now we need to cut for our hinges to hold all this together. And we need 2 at 2.5 by 11. For later. Now 1 at 5.5 by 11. Nope, I haven't miscounted. It's okay. I have tried other wet glues. I like Aleene's best. It's not sloppy wet. It lets me put my scrapbooks together and not worry too terribly much about them warping. You know, of course, any glue will warp if you use a lot of it, so I don't use it on big surfaces, but it is what I use to hold my scrapbooks together, my covers. Okay, the first thing I want to do is find the center of this piece. I'm just going to mark it top and bottom. I'll do the same thing on this one. If you have your Ranger ruler, you don't have a mat like this, use it. Not terribly difficult to do. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put down our little 1/2 inch pieces. And you don't have to put on a huge thick layer for this stuff to stick. And it dries relatively quickly. Just get it centered here. Hoping to get a nice good stick. Do the other one. Okay, so I'm going to put the 6.5 inch one here. Pull this out to the edge. Don't want this flipping up. Be working a lot with it before I get the papers over the top of it. Better safe than sorry. Now leave a nice, generous 1/8 inch gap. And the heavier your cardstock that you're using for a hinge, the more generous you need to be, because it's got to fold on the inside here when you lay down the other papers. So keep in mind that you need room for this to work without binding up. I'll do the same thing with an 8-inch piece. Put it on this side of the hinge. So this is going to be our front cover. Again, get that glue out there to the edge. Other one, just exactly the same for the back cover. Okay, next is for the hinge. And again, I want to find the center for the hinge. My goodness, for the spine. Oh. Sort of there. And find the center of this one. Being the part that holds your entire book together, make sure you get plenty of adhesive on here. With wet glue, you just make sure you get enough on there to work. You don't want this too wet. So, and of course, if you really want to, you can use score tape. I am not going to chastise you. Criminy. But I'm going to start pounding myself because I put glue on my marked side. So we're just going to eyeball this. Ew. Gooey, gooey glue. Okay. Now we'll put the fronts and backs on, making sure that you glue down the big piece and leave the smaller piece to the outside. There to the edge. Do not want this coming apart. Make sure you're gluing down the 8-inch piece and not the 6.5-inch piece. This is a craft mat. It's made with woven fiberglass, and stuff doesn't stick to it. And I'm not going to be able to pick this up safely to get the glue out to the edge. want to make sure I can just get it out of the way. And I'll wipe it off my mat later, or peel it off if the glue actually has a chance to dry. Out of the way. Face down again, making sure you've got the big 8-inch piece here. Okay, that's built. It needs to set probably at least 20 minutes before I want to start folding it and putting any stress on the glue. So we'll be back in a bit and do the hinge. This is all dry, so I'm just gonna fold it up. We need a piece of 11 by 11 for our hinges. Sometimes I use a piece of the pattern paper that I know I'm not going to use anywhere else because it's just really, well, just not something that I would use, but the colors will go with all the rest of the papers. So for instance, I have this Tattered Time, and I mostly love all the papers in here, but you have to find one that's not laminated. This stuff will crack. Say this piece, maybe if I didn't really think I would have a real use for it, but all the colors are going to coordinate, so I would use this to make my hinges rather than a sheet of just plain cardstock. The thing with this paper is a lot of it's got some of this shiny lamination on it. This would be a great piece. But you get the idea. But I'm going to use a piece of 12 by 12. This is from my stash. Of course, I'm going to put this so this pattern paper, the colored side doesn't show. So I've got a nice piece of craft here. So I need to cut it down to 11 by 11. Okay. Now I need to score this. And normally you score so you have a gutter piece on each end. But this is so wide and so different, you don't have to do that. So I would normally start at 2 and start my scorings, but I have a 3/8 inch gutter that's I'm going to use. So I'm going to do 2 3/8 and do my first line, and then there's my hinge. So this would be hinge 1. Now I need a space in between. So that's my space, then 2 more. For hinge 2. Then a space in between those. You can make your hinges as tall as you want. It's just a matter of how much paper you have, or if you're going to have to extend it by connecting 2 together. So it's up to you, but I like the 3/8 inch hinge. It gives me plenty of room for my page to grab onto it. So here's 3. Here's 4. And there's my 5th hinge. I could have gone in even further here because I have way more than 2 inches, 2 5/8 inches left over. Let's see, 1, 2. So I could have gone in another 1/2 inch, but this is going to be just fine. And it doesn't matter that this side is a little longer. If you're into perfection, just cut it down. Okay, so let me erase my gutter marks. I'll cover up the those pencil marks. So now what you want to do is your hinges, just fold them up. So they all look like this. You'll have a gap in between each hinge, which you want. And I fold both ways. This helps with the movement of the page once you get it built. It's easier to do it now when you're putting the hinges together than any other time, but as you will. Hinge 4. Whoops. That would have been not good. Okay. Here's 4 and here's 5. Okay, now this is what you've got. Now I'm going to turn it over. And inside all of those valleys, I'm going to put glue. And just enough so you have some there. If you make it too wet, it'll take forever to dry. This is a Teflon bone folder. They actually call it a lifter. It's got the lift end. I use it a lot. And then sort of a bone folder, and I switch, but nothing sticks to it. It feels nice in my hand. It's just perfect. I love it. I think where you can find it is bonefolders.com. They cost more than your average plastic bone folder. I've had mine at least 2 years now, and I would really, really be sad if I had to work without it. Creasing it like this is simply getting some of the volume of the paper from folding it. And if it's lying nice and flat, it's going to glue to the spine nice and neat. It didn't take long at all for that glue to be stuck enough. Okay, I want to take this down to 2 inches because it's going to make me bonkers. It just looked lopsided. I didn't have to do it, it's just, I had to do it. Okay. So you're gonna wanna center this on here. You have a center with your middle hinge. So we just need to mark the centers on this spine. This you want to adhere down well. This is literally the backbone of your album. You do not want it flopping around. Again, get plenty of adhesive on here, but don't put it on too wet. So, center and center. Put it down. we're gonna just set this, leave this part flat, let this again dry so it's nice and solid before you try to bend it. Your book will come out a lot nicer looking. This will stay flat and you won't have any issues. So we'll just set this aside. So, okay, these are 8 by 11 pieces. I have found the center and just drew a line. And then I went in a 1/2 inch and drew another line. Now this is to keep the space so these will go over our hinges. I did put down score tape, and I did it before I realized that I really don't want to use it, but it's there and that's alright. I can put glue down over the top of it. I tried it with one of the pages and it wants to pop up, so we're just not going to go there. So now we have our 7-inch hinge, 7 inches by 1 inches, scored it in the middle, put a little angle cut, and so these will be the hinges, so these turn into envelope pages. Right there. If you go on the other side, it's even with the fold. Don't want it over the top of that fold. You need that fold to work as your hinge, so just snuggle up right next to it. And do the same thing over here. Because you're using wet glue, you have a lot more leeway when laying down this next piece. You'll be able to squish it around, so it's absolutely perfect. If you use dry adhesive, then you have to take a lot more care when laying down your top layer of card. You want this to be on square. Just like that. Dry into a nice envelope. Okay, now I'm going to lift this tape. See about that line in there, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to put my glue down. I'm going to probably have to go from both directions. There's plenty of room in here for me to maneuver my glue bottle. I want to make sure to stop at that line because I don't want this closed down here. I want to be able to get this over my hinge. Okay. Then this has turned into this, which has now 2 pockets for a beautiful tag that'll hold a 5x7 card. Okay. We just finish the rest of the pages the same way. Time to adhere the pages. Make sure that when you're putting them on, you use wet glue. As you know, I use Aleene's, and make sure you're putting it on the side where you left that 1-inch gap when you glued down that center line. Otherwise, it's not going to fit on the hinge. Snip the corners to help the pages go over easier if you need to. Okay, finishing putting on your pages. Always use wet glue for this process. No matter what your climate, once it's dry, your pages are going to stay stuck. And that doesn't always happen with the dryer adhesives like score tape and such. Okay, that's it. Book is assembled, and we're ready to start building out our pages.